Good afternoon. How are you? Well, it's beautiful out. The temperature couldn't be better, so beware what's going to come around the corner. But it's, according to the Thomas Jefferson desk, we're at 77 right now, and the humidity is 33, and the wind's at 4. And again, the wind, it's absolutely still. I don't feel anything, and you probably don't hear anything on the microphone from the wind, so that's a benefit. Sometimes I think when walking that this is like some of those artists who see a tableau of nature, and then it changes with the light of the day, the seasons of the year, the leaves fall off, and so forth. This is us embraced by nature if we allow ourselves to pay attention. But there's another kind of sour embrace, and it's this political season, and it is Trump. Now, we have seen the variations of degradation that this man will reach to, and it's as if the public doesn't care, that it's okay with them. Now, when I think of criminals who are heroes, I think of kind of the Robin Hood kind of thing. You know, a person steals from the rich to give to the poor. But Trump is not that guy. But he knows that he has to promise those things to people. Yet still, within his con, he doesn't seem to allow for what ordinary humans do, which makes me think that there's some sort of aphasia, some sort of diminution of his ability to think and to think clearly and to make judgments, and that he's asocial. This is without being, any kind of psychologist or doctor or psychiatrist, not Jungian, not Freudian, none of the above. It's just observations. We bounce around each other all the time, and we make judgments about them. So, is America reserving the judgment on what a foul individual this is because they see some profit in it for themselves? One of the strangest incidents is the image of a leering locker room lech studying another man's junk. Trump's the genitalia candidate who ignores the individual right to privacy where men and women shower and dress. What does that tell us about him? Nothing good. In fact, it's the profile of somebody who, looks at child porn or abuses others. And we have some of that. We have that in his background. We have it proven in court. So I think we can say that if he went, military school taught him nothing. These people, some of them treat him as if he's Jesus, when he has none of the nature of the message. Love thy neighbor, turn the other cheek. He is the antichrist. He really is. He's the opposite of what Christ would be, which is kind of an argument, The Old Testament has the view that David is the kind of Christ, the Savior that was expected. But we're not going to do that today. So increasingly, we see Trump posturing himself as a dictator who knows no bounds, constitutional, legal, respect for privacy, any kind of social decorum, no bounds at all. And do we have to answer the question, what is the cause of this? Perhaps if we thought it would go away if we gave him a pill, a happy pill. But it's not our concern. Not if we vote for the other guy, in this case, the other woman. So, what is the voter seeing in these final days? Well, it varies across the country, but the Post spent the second page today talking about all the cases against Trump. And I think that's a worthy use of space. because I think everybody has to be reminded that these individual instances fit into a canopy of misconduct, strange behavior, asocial. You know, he'd be charming when he wants to be and terrible to the person he just complimented. So one of those things is that in November after the election, he'll be sentenced. Will the judge have the nerve, having not held the proceeding when he could have a month or so ago, will he have the courage to actually sentence him to 4 years? I would hope so. The guidelines make it fair. We've publicly seen his conduct. So to say that we can't comment on it, we're not going to affect the jury, and we have a right to say what we think is fair and just, or the First Amendment, which is guaranteeing us a right of access, doesn't mean a damn thing. Now, Trump also helicopters into situations. And we all have a little bit of the actor in us, or a lot at times. But he tries to suspend our disbelief and make us think that what he's doing is real. So when Trump goes to a McDonald's and he, quote, works there for, 50 minutes tops. Now, the only reason he did that was to claim that Kamala Harris did not work at McDonald's. He cannot believe that she worked at McDonald's? No. He sees it's effective. He sees it as a way that she unites with other people who've had to work and had it hard. And she has no complaints. And unlike Trump, and more like Kamala and many other people who found ways to get through school with scholarships, loans, and jobs and so forth, did every kind of thing. And Trump, this is alien to Trump. He doesn't know anything about this. So he wanted to claim something untrue, that Kamala did not work at McDonald's. Now, he was asked by someone, did he support the minimum wage? And he wanted a mulligan on it. What about taxing tips? What do you think about that? What do you think about who works at McDonald's? What conversation did you have with them? And if you're such a germaphobe, how did you feel touching that stuff? Well, he actually did say something about that. He was glad he was wearing plastic gloves. So, and then there's a big picture of him smiling widely, like, he's saying this to a citizen, but the people who interacted with him, they were pre-screened. So you might ask yourself, who in the world works for McDonald's, has an experience like his limited involvement as a political stunt to make a statement that was a lie about someone else who actually did the job? Now, Kamala has a faith, a true faith. My underpinnings, the base of my being, have nothing to do with the organized church. For what I see is to join it as a compromise. Apologies to those who feel otherwise. But her faith is genuine, I believe. Trump is being considered Jesus when everything he stands for is for the Antichrist. He's a no good. And yet, America is looking at him seriously. Now, I have said before, because at a young age I started reading things that Jefferson wrote. And there's just, you can get myriads of books and so forth, and multi-volume sets of who he was and what he did and what he thought. And it's fascinating. But one of the things that leaped out at me in one of his letters, I can't tell you to whom, I just don't remember. But the thing that jumped out was his belief that in a democracy, ultimately, the public gets it right. And at a young age in the Bronx, I didn't see it that way. Now, over time I've watched, and to my surprise, more frequently than I expect, the people do seem to get it right. Are they going to get this right on November the 5th? Another thing that Jefferson said, which is more widely commented upon than my first example, is that a nation that expects to be ignorant and free expects what never was and never will be. So is ignorance our problem? Is it because they're uneducated, so many people? Is it because they're gullible, because they believe the lies they're told? Now, I don't know that even the election will inform us what was going on here. But years ago, in Virginia, we had a race. And it was neck and neck, a statewide race. And the polls just didn't give up anything. But as we all were in a local restaurant, from those of us from Loudoun County, and we were watching the returns. And the returns came in overwhelmingly for Democrats. And my thinking was that the polls notwithstanding, the people reacted against the kind of campaigning that was brutal and lying and upheld the worst of individuals rather than the best. And so we had a big night for Democrats that I'm sure was supported by independents and Republicans because it was so clear a victory. What I'd like to believe, and I do think it's possible, because there are so many counter indicators to the polling, meaning it's so close. You know, if we start seeing polls that are 5 or 6 one direction or the other, we're going to have to draw a different conclusion. But right now, we're all in these fractions of a percentage between them. One's up, one's down, 2 to 1, 1 to 2. And I'm talking about increments of percentages separating them. So what I'd like to believe, because I want to believe it about the people of this nation, this is not just about winning an election. This is about having a nation going forward among people that want it to go forward, who have something to contribute, including their goodwill. So I'm hopeful that we may see a change in the polls. I don't know who's answering the phones or opening doors or getting caught on the street or answering emails. But that's how we do polls these days. And a lot of people say no thanks, myself included. I don't take polls. And, if the party, well, it's a long story. Anyhow, so I don't know that the polls tell us enough. And I don't believe that I have to have been part of the sample for a poll to be legitimate, because the notion of a poll is that you take a reasonable sample and it has some inferential value as to the universe from which you took that sample. So my hope is that there's a break that favors Kamala, of course, and otherwise it's a nail biter through November the 5th, and perhaps later than that, when ballots are cast and voted, in particularly the battleground states. So even though it's getting late in the game, you got to do what you're doing. You have to write to friends, encourage them. You have to get people to the voting booths. You have to do it all, what you can do, realizing that you have limited degrees of freedom to do something as determinative as Kamala will do on the stump or Tim will do on the stump. So, and some may think I'm dressed up. Well, by now some probably understand that what I do is, if I'm working, I'm dressed one way, and when I don't know when I can take a break, I just get up and go out and walk if I can. And some days I change and some days I don't, changing into not sweats, but old slacks, t-shirts, whatever's handy. So good to see you, and I say goodbye for today from my Cathedral of Trees. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.